All right, so yeah, Kristann Orton, and I'm kind of shifting gears a little bit and I've talked to several of you about how digital transformation really requires change management, and that's not to set myself up to be a change management expert, but just to say that that's been kind of the pervasive thing in my career as I've looked at digital transformation. So just a bit about me. I'm a software engineer by training. I worked at Hewlett-Packard for quite a few years, and I loved some of the work around 3D graphics. The guy from Hershey's, I did a bunch of toolkits to help with those kind of fly-through sort of things. We helped Boeing look at how to fly through their 3D design of their airplanes to really help with that. So I did a lot of work there. And then I started doing new business design. So HP was really looking at, okay, how do we innovate by looking at business model innovation, by looking at, new ways to provide our products, and help them create a sort of innovation engine, right? Going on like 3-month iterative cycles of like, how do we innovate and grow? And so I launched several businesses as a result of that. And the last one that I worked on, I'm going to show you a picture of this. This one was called Halo, and I worked with DreamWorks Animation on this. And this was my first foray into really understanding what experience design was all about. Before that, I did user interface design. I did things like that, but I didn't really think about it in terms of what the total experience looks like. And of course, DreamWorks is like the masters at making the imaginary look real. Like they were just so good at imagine me as a software engineer, I had to look at what the sheen, the reflection was off of the table in there. I had to look at where the cameras were. So this is it's a telepresence system. So these two rooms are connected, but they're halfway around the world from each other. And the idea was that executives who would use these systems wanted to be able to come in, sit down, and them to just work. They were frustrated. They would much rather get on a plane than try and get video conferencing stuff to work, right? So we created an operations center, a network operations center down in Puerto Rico. And we designed these systems to be connected. You could have all the same, in this case, there's actually 3 different locations that they're connected to. And then, of course, they've got a collaboration up on the top. So a way to collaborate and share slides, or we even had a little camera so you could hold something up on the tabletop that people could look at. So, lighting, we were able to, with our Network Operations Center, actually reach in and adjust any of the electronics in the room. And we did, nightly updates and that sort of thing. So really thinking about the experience of what this should look like. And not just, all of my career up till then, my customers, I was always in B2B enterprise. I was always working with other analytics. In my bubble, I thought everybody was like me, right? We were all analytic people. We loved to see data. That's the way we thought. But, I brought the executive assistants into these rooms and just completely different kind of people and different attitudes and behaviors. And so, it was really an eye-opener for me to think about that. And sorry, I'm leading up to one of the people I brought into the room was Steve Reinemann, who was the CEO of Pepsi at the time. And he looked at this and turned to the other person he brought in with him, and he said, wow, I can be home from my son's baseball game. Sorry, my daughter was softball. And I went, that's it. That's the purpose. That's the thing that is going to get adoption of this technology within Pepsi. It's that whole personal motivator that says, this is the way that we can affect the adoption of new technologies. And so I really started looking at that and what that meant. So then I left HP, actually, as Leo Apotheker was the CEO for a year at HP, and he sold our business. I got sold along with it as the founder of the telepresence system. And I sort of started saying, okay, how can I use this knowledge that I just built about purpose driving adoption of innovation and adoption of new technologies and take it out to some places that really needed it. So the first place I went was as an entrepreneur in residence for the federal government in Health and Human Services under Todd Parks. Crazy shit, sorry. It just kind of blew my mind to think about going someplace completely different like that. And what I realized is that there was some formulas out there that, and I'm sure some of this is very familiar to all of you. You know, John Kotter wrote the Bible of adoption of new technologies. But the one that I discovered that I really loved was actually by B.J. Fogg. And he really looked at it in terms of behavior change and how to affect adoption of new behaviors. So when I combined Kotter's work with what B.J. Fogg did, it really came down to this. So the idea that in order for a new technology to be adopted by any individual in any organization, they needed to have knowledge. And we've talked a little bit about knowledge here, but that's really about the what. Why is this organization doing this? The transparency of that vision is the way Kotter talks about it. But it's also about sort of what's our goal? What are we trying to achieve? All right, I just messed things up. There we go. Sorry. The second one was really about skills.
Did you lose power? Let's see it over here.
There we go. Oh, yeah, okay. I'm not sure. The second one was really about skills. So in the skills is the how, but it's really about giving people confidence, right? So if you're expecting them to adopt a new technology, a new system, you need to make it so that it's super easy for them to adopt it. You need to give them the tools. Some of that actually, because I did a lot around user experience design, was around simplicity of the systems that we developed so that they could easily become confident in the system. And then the third one was around motivation. A lot of people talk about motivation in terms of, oh, we give a grand vision. No, these are personal motivators. What's it going to be for me? How is it that it's going to help me do my job? And there's been a lot of talk about AI at this session today. And there's a gentleman in Tacoma who talks about AI. He does a system for physicians, and he talks about it as assisted intelligence. And I love that because doctors, as you can imagine, don't want anybody trying to take over their jobs. But something that could make them look smarter, oh yeah, I am all over that. So really like tapping into those motivators and helping people be smarter in what they do. Another use case then I wanted to talk about, so I talked a little bit about HHS. Another customer that I worked with, and again, completely different space, was Meals on Wheels of America. So Meals on Wheels, those of you who don't know, they're delivering meals to seniors who are living at home. And they discovered that the only people who those seniors saw on a regular basis were their Meals on Wheels drivers. So those volunteers, and those volunteers were often seniors themselves, would go every day and deliver a meal. Any given volunteer might only do that route once a week or once a month, but they were the only ones who saw it. And they said, you know what, we could reduce the amount of health issues that our seniors have who are living alone in their home, just simple things like falling over things, if we take the eyes and ears of those volunteers and capture them somehow. And so we looked at, okay, how do we create a simple app that they have on their phone that was like, okay, let me capture the change of condition that I see. Is somebody talking differently? Are they holding their arm differently? Are they walking differently? And just by doing that, we were able to really reduce the amount of hospitalizations of the seniors. But the personal motivator, again, the team that I was leading that was implementing the technology was like, Well, hey, we'll just train them, right? We'll train them how to use this application. But the personal motivator for these guys, for these volunteers, were they loved their seniors, right? They wanted to keep them out of the hospital. They were very much afraid of being seen as like the big brother, like, oh, you've got, because there are a lot of hoarders, right? So they were like, oh, I don't want to tell on them. I don't want to get them in trouble. I don't want to. So, but the idea that by using this application, I could use this common framework of assessing a change in condition that then would keep people out of the hospital, they were all for that, and it provided transparency. So that purpose that they developed really helped. I've talked to a couple of people about who have kids here. I have 3 daughters between the ages of 14 and 20. And they are, coming up on a world that is demanding something completely different out of the companies that they work for. I don't know if you guys have seen this statistic, but 52% of purpose-driven companies have successfully completed a major transformation versus 16% without. It's really telling about how that purpose helps to drive the vision and connects to those personal motivators. 70% say purpose is defined by work. And then Gen Z, I love this statistic. They're the first ones to say, I will take sustainability over salary. So I care more about sustainability. And I don't know about you guys, but the changes I've had to go through with my kids making me be more sustainable is just crazy, right? I mean, it's just, and then of course, then there's new hires really want to make social and environmental impact in their jobs. So this is sort of coming at us right now, but to me it's a opportunity. So let's take a look at this. So this is my next project that I'm working on right now, and I just wanted to share this with all of you, which was really looking at sustainable suppliers and a sustainable supply chain. And it's asking that question: how can we use that personal motivator to help to facilitate this whole idea of moving towards a more sustainable society? You guys might be wondering what 17 ways means. We're all about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, so we're really trying to shift to social environmental impact. And it's really allowing those buyers, whether it's the purchasing department or it's the buyers within an enterprise, to say, okay, I've always been measured by lower risk, higher quality in all the purchases I make, but I'm starting to see that I may need to also look at social environmental impact. And what does that mean for me to start to think about what my social environmental impact could be from my supply chain? So here's an example of what that could look like. Are y'all familiar with Scope 3 emissions? You guys heard that? Yeah. Basically, if you take, it's right here in the middle here. If you look at Scope 1 and Scope 2, those are direct emissions from our own operations and our own organizations. The crazy thing is that more than 80% of our emissions come from Scope 3, which is from our supply chain. More than 80%. That just blows my mind. And that came out of the IPC report that came out at the end of last year. And so, some of the analysis here is, if I look at half of the present value that I can get from expected growth, half of that can be chipped away by some of these things that are social environmental impact. I've got a great motivator to protect that. And then if I start to look at what I can gain by working with my suppliers in order to increase their views of social environmental impact, I can actually get more out of working with my suppliers than I can working in my own organization. And then the last thing I think that was really interesting is that this was a report out of McKinsey on sustainability and supply chains. They really looked at how companies that were actually adopting supplier relationship management that moved away from things like auditing to actually helping their suppliers create sustainable programs would directly support their own goals. So here's some barriers. I've done a few design sprints with a couple different enterprise customers to really understand what the barriers are for adoption. And again, you know, for me, this is about trying to create a better future for my kids. It's really sort of that my heart's really in this. So I sort of dug into, okay, what would it, everybody that I talked to said, yeah, you know, I do all these things at home to reduce, you know, to use my dollar to make sure that I'm buying from a sustainable sustainable companies, to, you know, reduce the amount of trash I create or make sure I'm recycling. I've bought an electric car and I switched to using all renewable resources for my electricity to make sure I wasn't negating the benefits by buying from coal. So, you know, there's all these things that I do at home, but how do I bring all of those values that I have at work? And that's, to me, I was like, oh, that's the goal. That's their personal motivator. If they can make a connection between the sustainability work that they're doing at home and bring it into work, and then use those dollars, because those are much higher dollars, in order to make an impact and who they're buying from, we can get there. So some of the things I talked about, the lack of social environmental impact data. So like, for example, one buyer I talked to, they're like, well, you know, I just buy SaaS. So that's the only things that I buy, and that has no impact, social or environmental impact. Did you know that in the US, data centers have a higher carbon footprint, or equal carbon footprint, to all global travel in a year? That's just like, blows my mind. And so companies that, if you buy from a SaaS provider that actually is choosing green data centers, you know, you're actually doing a lot more for the environment than you can by reducing the amount of travel that your business takes. So that lack of data is something that is really impacting this. A lack of a comparison framework, right? I mean, there's so much around greenwashing. You guys heard about greenwashing? Yeah. There's so much about greenwashing right now. Like, you know, people are using sustainability as a way to market their company. And it's all a bunch of BS, right? It's really harming all of the efforts that we have to try and create more social environmental impact. And then the last thing is that, you know, let's say I did want to buy from a SaaS company that was using renewable sources for their energy, for their data centers. Oh my gosh, the red tape I have to go to onboard a new supplier, and the bruises that I get from trying to justify that purchase are not worth it. So how do we make it so it's really easy for them to buy from new suppliers? So as I was saying, our company comes from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. You'll notice, you know, there's things on here like zero hunger, but there's also things like all of you, every single one of you in this room, you're all here under number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. The work that you are doing in order to innovate and grow really contributes to where we're going here. But it's also things like, you know, you may think that you're not doing anything around poverty, but a lot of companies that I talked to, actually I saw this with Hershey's, I think. A lot of companies are helping, you know, people lower socioeconomic and within their own communities, and helping them to train them and to get them so that they can, you know, step up. I personally do a lot of work helping people, women and minorities, develop their own companies, because as we know, wealth can, a lot of times happens from business ownership. And then there's also all of these types of things. So things like, you know, contributions that we make to the causes that we care about. Anybody heard of B Corps? Yeah. So one of the cool things about B Corps is that they actually have to develop an impact business model. So they actually have to say, not just, how are we not doing any harm, but what are the things that our business, at its core, is built in order to create social and environmental impact. So they're pretty cool, and they have a great B impact assessment if anybody's interested in taking that. Things like minority women and minority certified. I think as I was talking about building wealth. And then sustainable brands. This is a great organization. They do a conference every year that really talks about sustainability embedded in the brand itself. And there's lots more. But so this is my grand vision, sharing it with all of you. So this idea that we could have this sustainable procurement paradigm. Starting with a consumer experience so that people have that knowledge, so they don't have to learn something totally new. They can actually use a familiar online shopping experience in order to find and buy from suppliers. Using stories, there's tons of stories out there about how businesses are impacting those SDGs, those 17 ways. Really using those stories in order to help people build their skills around what to look for when they're buying for sustainability. And then tying back to their values and their impact from purchases, as well as the company values, right? So typically a company picks 3 to 5 sustainable development goals they're really focused on, and connecting your purchases to, your B2B purchases to contribute to those is key. So if you want to join me on this, the thing that I would encourage you to do, really look at current suppliers. We're working with a couple of companies right now who are doing this. Like, how do we do a social and environmental impact audit or assessment? And I'll tell you, one of the easiest places to look at is indirect. Indirect can be 50% of your total spend in a particular product. And really looking at the stories of the action they're taking in order to achieve that. So one of the problems I've had, and if you look for me on Medium, I just wrote a blog post about this. Many of the frameworks for looking at social and environmental impact right now have been developed by finance, accounting, and they're really looking at what negative impact you're having. There isn't a lot around telling the stories of actions that people are taking to make a positive impact. So I would encourage you, when you're looking at your current suppliers, to think about what the positive impact they're doing. See if you can establish targets. I talked about the SDGs, but the ESGs is another framework. And of course, the SEC just came out and said that they're going to start to expect every company to put that in their annual report, their ESG impact. And then make it really easy to choose sustainability. A what-if analysis. What if I bought from this new supplier? What would that look like? All right, I'm a sailor, so that's why you see lots of pictures of sailing up here. And I just wanted to thank you all. And let me just grab my quote. The wind has changed, and it's time to adjust your sails. So to me, that's what sustainability is all about. Where the wind is taking us in that direction, it's inevitable, and it's time we adjust our sails and start to get there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Questions, comments? My question is, we're a small services firm. What would it take to be a B Corp? Is that something that is feasible for a small business? It is. It's a bit of work. I would start by, if you Google B impacted, B and then separate word impact assessment, anybody can take that, and that'll give you an idea of the things that you do. And so basically, you'll go through, you'll take that whole thing, and you'll get points for different things that you're doing. And again, the points are mostly based on positive things you're doing. But the core is to look for your impact business model. And it could be as simple as your services firm
we make sure that we bring, we serve 5% of our customers are from developing countries, for example. That could be one thing. And we figured out a charging model that allows us to serve those customers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Questions, thoughts? How many are sort of going down this path, or organizations, any of your organizations looking at sustainability and looking at these types of things?
Hey.
David?
I'll just tell you a war story from Dell, which has a pretty substantial sustainability practice, including that we make a lot of our PC cases from plastic recycled from the oceans. That one fact was far more decisive than anything else for purchase decision among essentially anybody under the age of 30.
Wow.
I mean, it blew us away because, of course, we're saying like, high-speed processor, visually stunning display.
Wow,
Like,
that's fascinating.
They don't give a crap.
No.
Wow.
But you say, yeah, we built this case from recycled ocean plastic. They're like, I will buy it.
Yep.
Well, that's hopeful, It's
Yes.
nice to see that. It's nice to hear that. Other thoughts? Other comments or questions? I mean, I agree. It is directionally where we need to go, and it's certainly, you see that in younger generations. And
Yeah.
something I remember in the 70s when I would watch films about all the pollution and all the environmental damage, and it was just hopeless, and look at where we've come since then.
Yeah,
But
it
now
feels
we
like
have
we're
so
full
much
of
more.
hope now, right?
Yeah. But back then it was pretty awful, as you may recall.
Yeah.